joining me here on the last segment of today's show, going over some quick changes that could come to the new kickoff format in 2024. So far, I think so good for the new format, as it has produced more kickoffs actually being returned out of, the end zone or just out of the landing zone, because just in the preseason, we've had 78% of the kickoffs getting returned in comparison to last year, where 63% of the kickoffs were returned in the preseason. So obviously there's a difference between the preseason and the regular season, but initially you're seeing what you wanted out of this new kickoff format, right? And the average starting spot so far has been about that 28-yard line, which seems like a decent spot to start, not too much in an advantage for the return team, and also not such a big advantage for the kickoff team that, offenses are starting from the 25 and the 20-yard line. It seems like a good median so far on that, but it is good, but still there are some concerns when we do get to the regular season that these touchbacks and the willingness for kickoff teams to just kick it out of the back of the end zone will increase because of the fact that the average starting spot is the 28-yard line already. So we talked about this with Sean Payton, weeks ago now, where he was one of the first coaches to bring it up, and basically saying that with this new format, with these new rules, obviously, yeah, it's great with the touchback and wanting to at least make it more of an incentive to do it, but if teams are getting to the 30-yard line anyway, that's the average starting spot, like I mentioned before, he feels like there would be a reluctance from teams kicking off in the regular season, that what's the point in kicking off if they're just going to get to the 30-yard line anyway? Let's kick it through the end zone and let's have it start at the 30 anyway. So that is obviously going to be a problem that pretty much completely negates the fact or the idea that you had with this new kickoff rule, trying to make more people kick it off. If they're just still going to kick it into the back of the end zone, there really is no point. So that's a big issue with it. That's why Sean Payton sort of proposed the idea to have the touchback rule, to have the touchback move up to the 35-yard line instead of the 30, because that way, like I agree, most teams will not want to give up a starting spot at the 35-yard line. That's basically almost starting at the 40 if you kick it out of bounds or have a penalty or something like that. So you don't want to give up that much starting position, and I feel like the NFL should change it to that, but it doesn't feel like they're too eager to do it, because the NFL chief football administrative officer, Dawn Aponte, was asked about the possibility of making this change, moving to the 35-yard line instead of the 30-yard line, and she didn't rule it out, but she didn't seem too worried about teams being reluctant to kick it into the landing zone and rather decide to just get a touchback anyway. She said it would not be likely. The way that we passed this and discussed it with the competition committee as well as membership at large was really about continuing to evaluate it as a one-year rule change. So we anticipate to evaluate this throughout the season. So I think you can take a few things from that. The fact that she said that it's a one-year sort of thing with this rule change. It's a one-year sort of evaluation. Yeah, they're gonna monitor it. Yeah, they're gonna keep track of it during the regular season. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're gonna be willing to make changes once the regular season starts, right? Because Aponte also suggested that they'll continue to monitor this throughout the preseason, but they could still make some minor changes before the regular season, and that could be to other things about it. She said they already made it illegal, for kickers to put the ball sideways when they're trying to, get that kick away. They're not allowed to put it sideways, but also they are allowed a 12th man on the field whenever there's inclement weather or things like that. They are allowed to have a 12th man on the field. They've allowed that to happen. Those are some changes that already have been made. So, yeah, they've made some changes, but they don't seem likely to come with some of the bigger issues, which I still have a problem with. I still find it a little bit uneasy that when things get tough, when things start to tighten up, especially in the playoffs or something like that, you can't give up starting position, or you can't run the risk of thinking that a touchback is not going to be the best situation for you, you decide to just kick it out of the back of the end zone. That way, there's absolutely no chance the team returning that kick is not going to return it to the 40 of your side of the field, or get it over half field as well. So to completely erase that, just kick it out of the back of the end zone. I feel like it might not happen during the regular season where they're going to evaluate it, but once we get to the playoffs where it really matters most, I fear that teams, kickoff units are just going to resort back to their old ways, and that's not what you want to see. That's not what the NFL wants to see, obviously. In the biggest, most important portion of the year, they don't want to see touchbacks just come back anyway. They want to see this new format out there. They want to see it put into effect, and that's why I'm a little bit puzzled why they wouldn't move it. I get that you don't want to give too much an advantage to the return team, but at the same time, if everything that you've worked for basically can just be wiped out like that by teams just deciding to kick it for a touchback anyway, it seems like it's almost worth it to just make this change, but that's just me. I'm a fan of moving it back to the 35, but I don't really know if they're going to be willing to do that at this point in time. I feel like they just want to see how it plays out before they really make that change. And it's weird because initially that was going to be the rule. That was going to be the rule to have it start at the 35 if you kick it through the back of the end zone. But the last moment they got together and they changed it to the 30. So a little bit ironic how it works, but that's what they decided to go with. And also, it seems like the regular season is a little bit off limits, like I alluded to before, to making any sort of changes. They said they're going to evaluate some of the changes that they could make in the regular season, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to change it, because if you're making changes, it's one thing to do it in the preseason, right, where these games don't really matter, the outcomes don't really matter. But if you try to make changes during the regular season, that's when you're going to get more of an uproar, more of just criticism towards the NFL for changing the rules once the games actually start, and then there's more confusion, and then there's more of just an uproar on whether or not they're supposed to do this, they're supposed to do that. You change in 1 week, and now nobody really knows what they're doing for a very new sort of kickoff rule, and that's the last thing you want to do, is make a whole big mess about this once the regular season starts. So it seems like the regular season is going to be the deadline to actually making changes, so they got to get anything in there that they really want to before the regular season starts. And just lastly here, there was an interesting point brought up before. I think I saw it on somewhere on just national media. I think it might have been the Pat McAfee show, but regardless of that, with the starting spot, the way the new rule works, nobody's allowed to move until the returners pick it up and start running with the ball. So the question that comes up from that is, how are you supposed to tell when the kicker, or when the returner, picks it up? Because when you're defending, you want to get a good jump, right? Obviously, you want to get in good position to make the tackle to avoid a huge return, right? But if you're sort of like looking over, trying to look through guys, and you don't really know when the returner picks up the ball, it could lead to some more false starts or offsides, however they call it, and it gets a little bit sloppy, and then that way you still don't have a return at the end of the day. More so, the kickoff team is more at a disadvantage if that happens to be the case. So it was brought up that maybe a second whistle could be blown to sort of signal the start of the play. You blow the whistle once the returner actually picks up the ball, and that way you avoid any sort of confusion on whether or not he has the ball. You avoid constant penalties that you could see by someone just jumping ahead of time. So that was another thing that I found interesting with this rule. Maybe they consider that, but then if you have another whistle, does it become too confusing by having two whistles? There's a lot of positives and negatives to take from that. So it's something to think about. There's only one more week left, so any sort of things they want to iron out is going to come after this upcoming weekend and in preparation to the start of the regular season. So hopefully they make the necessary changes to make this play as successful as possible, because I'm a fan of it. I don't want it to become a thing every week where everyone's starting to complain about it. I think this could be a good thing. It's just a matter of the NFL getting it right and making it the most efficient as it can be. But we'll see. We'll see where they take it. But that'll be it for today's show. That'll conclude today's episode of the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast. Please remember to like, follow, and subscribe to the show, as well as following the network on all forms of social media. If you want to see more of this show, check out both of those channels for more content around the NFL as well in a variety of different ways. And lastly, tune in every weekday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time for more discussions and the hottest headlines around the NFL with me, Manny Maradiaga, as your host. Thanking you for joining me today, and also I hope to see you guys back here joining me again tomorrow.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to